Chapter 5. A metal door hissed open. Kep and the rest of the team followed Qureshi into a long, narrow room. A woman with gray hair spiking out of a topknot sat alone at the head of a conference table. Presumably Annie, the woman Mule had called the really big boss, wore a black pantsuit and, oddly, white gloves. She frowned at whatever she was reading on her laptop screen. Two glass walls overlooked a space that resembled a NASA launch control room, with a mind-boggling array of computers and white-coated scientists talking into headsets and tapping touchscreen wall computers. Trooping around in 18th-century clothes, Kep felt like an off-season trick-or-treater. TJ pointed to the train car they'd seen earlier waiting between two sections of enormous metal tunnels. "Our transport to saving America awaits." "That's going to look realistic in colonial Boston." Tella rolled her eyes, not bothering to lower her voice. "Let's hope they've got a time-travel horse cart stashed somewhere else." "Put the kibosh on Smart Aleck," said TJ in a loud whisper. "They'll have to cut and redo this if we're on hidden camera now. This is the buy-in scene, remember? We believe." Qureshi either didn't hear or didn't care about the team members' quibbling. She strode toward the far end of the room where the older woman sat. Annie closed a slim laptop as Qureshi bent her head and murmured something. A jarring 2-century difference showed between the women's clothing, with Qureshi in a long colonial-style dress and Annie in a pantsuit, but their tense expressions matched. Moments later, Qureshi approached the team still huddled inside the doorway. "TJ, you will come with me," she said tersely. "Me? Miss the big meeting?" TJ folded his arms. "That's not happening." Qureshi looked back at Annie. "I'll deal with it," Annie said. Qureshi nodded, then exited, apparently abandoning the team to the next phase. "Please sit." Annie took off her glasses. She gestured to chairs around the table with her white-gloved hands, looking like a traffic cop. She must have noticed Kep's curious look, because she added, "I have arthritis, and the gloves help." As the team made their way toward the table, TJ whispered, "Probably thought I'd steal the scene. Remember, when she gets to the time travel spiel, play along. Shocked and stupefied is the look. Like this." TJ's mouth hung down while his eyebrows shot up. "No off switch, Mr. Wannabe Heartthrob?" asked Tella. "Remember the cameras, smart mouth," said TJ. "Editing expenses will come straight out of any future royalty checks." Tella grudgingly made her way to the table and plopped down next to Max, who'd taken the chair directly to Annie's left. Kep hoped she wouldn't bail when they were so close. Assuming she could rein in her activist stuff, her shooting skills might be the best thing they had going for them in this competition. Granted, this new scheme kind of threw him too, but how hard could it be? They'd win this thing and head home, cash in hand. And royalty checks had a nice ring. Impatient to get story time over and go to the competition, a.k.a. their time travel mission, Kep looked around for a clock. TJ covered his mouth and said in a low voice, "Weird there's no American flag in here for our big gotta go save the country scene. Bet you $50 they put it in post-production." "Huh? Green screen tech." "Whatever." Kep didn't have time to decipher TJ's movie jumbo. He took a chair opposite Max, who looked the ultimate happy camper. For a history and science junkie, this had to be the stuff of dreams, even if it was all fake. Tella drummed her fingers, looking annoyed. "I am Annie. I know all of your names, so we can skip introductions." Annie put her glasses back on and glanced around the table, as if to read their faces. "As Qureshi has informed you, your mission is real." Tella made a face, but TJ gave her a quick kick under the table. She shot back a lethal glare, but said nothing. "I'm sure you're trying to process it all, but we don't have much time," said Annie. "America is under threat. We're about to launch your time travel mission back to 1775. Thinking of those royalty checks, Kep tried to appear shocked and stupefied, but wasn't sure he pulled it off. Instead, he felt impatient to get to the action part of whatever drummed-up competition they were about to start. TJ, who'd been sitting to his left, bounded to his feet, slapped his palms on the table, and said in a voice as deep as Darth Vader's, "Let it be known, we are prepared to save liberty." Let it be known TJ loves the limelight. Annie's eyes flickered in surprise. "TJ, this is real. You do realize that." "Of course it's real, and it's do or die time." TJ's voice started to crack under the baritone effort. He switched to a British accent. "We shall fight on the beaches, in the fields and hills. We shall never, never, never give in." "That's Churchill you're quoting," said Max. "Different war. Here we're fighting the British." "Clever, heartthrob," Tella oozed snark. "You ask, what is our aim?" TJ ignored Tella, flinging an arm toward the bare wall behind him, the supposed green screen. "It is victory! Victory at all costs!" Annie's fingers clenched the end of the table. "Sit down, TJ." She drew in a deep breath, her nostrils flaring. "Enough theatrics. This is not some game. Lives depend on the success of this mission." TJ dropped back into his seat. "Consider us ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm." "For the record, why can't Revere and Dawes make their own ride?" asked Tella. Annie unclenched her fingers. "A man named Fox has traveled back in time. We believe he's captured Revere and Dawes to destroy our nation at its birth." Fox. That was the name of the guy Kep had overheard Quarishi talking about. The guy she said would destroy them. Hopefully she'd underestimated their team. Max leaned forward, eyes wide. "Without Revere and Dawes, the rebels will never know the British are coming." "Yes." Annie's face looked strained. "Their weapons will be confiscated and their leaders arrested. The entire trajectory of our country will be over before it's begun." TJ templed his fingers. "Domino effect. Big-time villain." "If it happened in the past, it's already done, isn't it?" Tella's expression suggested little interest in the answer. "In the case of divergent timelines, there's a window of opportunity to switch it back, before it becomes permanent," said Annie. "How short is the window?" asked Max. "We don't know exactly, but the shorter the better." "So you're sending 4 kids to save the world?" Tella raised her eyebrows. "That's like sending kids on the first manned mission to Mars. Shouldn't you send adults? Trained mercenaries? Not to be rude, but your story makes 0 sense." "This is not a story," Annie snapped. "You need to realize that before you arrive in 1775 and panic. We didn't plan to send children. We had no choice." "Natch, you'd send adults if you could," TJ jumped in. "You're being forced to send us." "Seems a lot smarter to send Bombast or Ramsay or even Mule. Just my humble opinion," offered Tella. "Why do you say you're forced to send us?" Kep asked Annie the obvious question. "Of the select few trained reenactors who know the true situation, each would find it a privilege to serve our country. However, they don't have the rare DNA that allows time travel," said Annie. "You 4 do." "Convenient," Tella smirked. Kep shot a look at Max. In his journal, Max had written, "Stolen toothbrushes plus stolen dirty handkerchief equals stolen DNA samples." But dreamy-eyed Max didn't say a word. Annie looked like a substitute teacher facing an out-of-control class. "I know what it looks like, but Fox caught us off guard by going now." "Who is this Fox person?" asked Tella. "Aren't you listening?" TJ leaned forward. "He's the villain!" Kep ignored his teammates' matching scowls and focused on Annie. "Our DNA affects our reaction to time travel?" That's the story. I mean, that's what you're saying? Yes, Annie said shortly. It's extremely rare. You're all we've got. Kind of like superhero DNA. TJ leaned back, hands clasped behind his head. I'm Black Panther. Tella, you're Jean Grey. Jean Grey? Tella asked in a, do I really have to listen to this voice? You know, Marvel Comics. Her powers are interstellar travel and teleportation. Apropos, don't you think? And, if I remember right, mind control. Trust me, she stared back and added tartly. The mind control isn't working. That's because our powers are time travel, said TJ. Like, some rare people can walk in a field of poison ivy, gather bouquets of it, and feel no effects. We're like time travel invincible. Not invincible, said Annie. There are limits. What limits? Kep shifted in his chair, trying to ignore an uneasy feeling. 24 hours is our best estimate. After the 24 hours? Kep had to keep reminding himself this was all pretend. Let's not worry about that now. Annie's gaze moved to the glassed-off computer room. How do you know our DNA allows time travel? Max regarded Annie curiously. You tested it? Annie took a deep breath. An earlier team, adult volunteers who did not share your DNA, attempted time travel. That mission failed. Kep looked Annie in the eyes and saw... what? Grief? Fear? The story was too wild to be true, so why did his gut feel queasy? Define failed. They didn't make it back. They're stuck back in time? TJ offered eagerly. So we rescue them and take the midnight ride? He caught Kep's eye and mouthed, Sweet. But when Annie responded, her voice sounded dead serious. They didn't survive the trip. You are, quite literally, our only hope to stop Fox. Fox is a dead man! TJ cracked his knuckles, then stopped, glancing at Annie. Too violent, maybe? Before she could answer, he added, Let's go with, we'll make him pay. TJ's hamming it up helped Kep's shoulders relax. This acting stuff, at least on Annie's part, could really convince a guy. If she said the Galactic Empire was about to attack, he'd have to remind himself not to go find an X-Wing fighter. What if we can't stop Fox? Max asked. What if we fail? Timelines change, said Annie. History changes. Our country could disappear. Kep's stomach twisted. She deserved an Academy Award or... what? Give her a campfire and some ghost stories and listeners would get PTSD. Our country! Gone! Poof! Vaporized! TJ snapped his fingers. We, the Sons of Liberty, are on board with the mission. He looked pointedly at Tella, who sat with her arms crossed. And a certain Daughter of Liberty is on board too, because the well-being of our country is at risk. Kind of like certain primates trapped in cages at research centers, right? Tella's returned look could fry an egg on the sidewalk. She turned to Annie. Sticking point. How could you know about our DNA? Another scintillating question for the cutting room floor, TJ muttered under his breath. We are getting off subject. Annie's voice was sharp. But for the record, DNA can be extracted from almost any human sample. Nails, blood, urine. The chamber pots in our barracks were to test our DNA? Kep asked, before remembering this was all an act. Gross! Annie sat steely-eyed. DNA doesn't have to come from bodily fluids. It can be found on the rims of cups, knives, forks, any surface that comes into contact with the human form. Unless Annie was behind the robbery, she wouldn't have had their samples until they came to camp, so it didn't make sense that they were specially invited for their DNA. But bringing that up meant sitting here at story time even longer, and Kep was antsy to get to some action. So when do we start, saving the country? That's the attitude, TJ fist-bumped Kep. "I don't believe you truly understand the stakes," said Annie. "We do!" TJ flashed what had to be his best sincerely concerned look and swiveled his head from one side of the room to the other as if posing for hidden cameras. "The only question is, when do we make the jump to hyperspace? Or whatever?" Annie silenced him with a wave. "There is another issue, and no easy way to say it." She met TJ's eyes. "You won't be going, TJ." TJ jerked his head back. "Say what?" Kep's mind whirled. "Huh?" "It was a difficult decision, but 1775 is dangerous enough." Annie glanced to her laptop and pressed her hands flat on the table. "Being an African-American kid in colonial Boston is too risky. You'll stay behind." "I'm banned?" TJ blinked, astonished. Then he clenched his jaw and narrowed his eyes. "Because I'm black?" "You'll remain part of the mission," said Annie. "You'll help from this end." "I don't want to help from this end," TJ said between his teeth. "You decided this now?" Kep couldn't keep up. First she gives them the line about saving the country. Then she pulls the rug out from under the kid who wants most to go. "Flipping unbelievable!" TJ balled his fists. "You do realize this country wouldn't exist without people like me. African Americans were at every battle in the entire war." "They faced more dangers than you can possibly understand," said Annie. "You're protecting me from what? Racism? Because it's gone now? Doesn't exist in the 21st century?" TJ nearly shouted. "Do you have a clue?" "I'm not saying that. But you have no idea." "I have no idea?" TJ's jaw hardened. "I bet $1,000,000 I'm the only one on this team that's had the talk. And no, not about reproduction. My dad is a federal judge. My uncle is a chief of police. But I've been hearing the conversation since I was Max's age. If you're stopped by a cop, do what he says, even if he's harassing you, even if you did nothing wrong. Use your phone to record as much as you can, but keep your hands where he can see them. Don't talk back. If you pull up your hoodie against the rain, realize some people will assume you're up to no good. Don't you dare tell me I have no idea." Kep felt sick. "If you ban TJ, count me out too." "And me," said Max. "Ditto," said Tella. "Why did TJ train with us if you were going to pull this? Beyond stupid. And cruel." "I intended you all to go," said Annie. "My loyalty is to the mission. 4 are more likely to succeed than 3. However, your group was identified before we knew which turning point in history Fox would target. When we figured out it was the Revolutionary War, some working on the mission threatened to walk off if TJ were sent, that it was too dangerous for him." She looked directly at TJ. "I insisted you be allowed to train, thinking they'd change their minds. Everyone agrees you'd be an asset, especially with your acting skills. But I just received notification of an emergency vote. The majority feels you are too young to make the decision to go to Revolutionary War times." "Who isn't in danger during war?" Tella asked. "TJ's risks are higher," said Annie. "Even free African Americans risked being sold into slavery illegally by slave catchers. We could send freedom papers, but what if they were lost or destroyed?" Their historically accurate competition story got uglier by the minute, and Kep's enthusiasm for it plummeted. The door burst open, and a woman wearing a lab coat rushed to Annie and whispered something. "Wait here," Annie said to the kids. "I'll be right back." When the adults left the room, the sound system outside crackled. "T-minus 20 minutes." The door closed, and the room hung in silence. Wide-eyed, Max gave TJ an awkward hug. TJ looked grim. "Sorry I lost my cool." "They're jerks," said Tella. "We don't need their stupid contest. Let's all just go home." "No, we don't quit now." TJ shook his head.
I think I figured out what just happened. Another plot twist.
Another one? Asked Tella. They're going from bad to worse.
Here's the thing. When you act, you count on your audience suspending disbelief. You need them to believe it's all real. Whoever is behind our reality show probably figures some viewers won't swallow the idea of sending a modern black kid to a time of slavery, even to save the world. They stop believing, switch channels, finito.
And that leaves us where? Kep favored a plot twist finito.
We do the contest. We've all got stakes in winning, said TJ. No way I'm staying behind. They're probably planning for me to get creative. Show more agency.
What's agency? Asked Tella.
Skip it.
TJ put a finger to his lips, then ducked his head under the table. A second later, he popped back up and whispered,
Checking for hidden mics. We gotta figure they're still filming, so let's keep it on the down low.
He rubbed his chin.
New plan. I sneak on board the transport. Maybe I could wait farther along that track that train car is on, then hop on as you exit this place.
I don't think it works like that, Max said softly, leaning in. A car on magnetic rails would be going way too fast.
Other ideas?
Asked TJ.
Maybe, said Max. I just finished a book about famous escapes. Don't hold back, history boy. TJ poked Max in the chest. We've got a train to catch.